For those that don't know me, my name is Chris Cruz. I am the Chief Deputy Director of Operations for the Department of Technology. Again, welcome. We're going to talk to you about the department initiatives that we have, and not only CalCloud, we're going to talk to you about what we're doing with CES, Mail moving forward. We have some exciting news on CES and being able to move that forward. We're going to talk to you about Office 365 and the ongoing negotiations we're having with GGS. So we're moving our technology forward, and we want to look at community-based governance in which we do that. So over the period of months, you're going to hear me over-communicate a lot on these issues, but we're going to help take those issues and make those opportunities as we move forward here with the community. We're going to talk about our CalCloud mission, vision, and goals. Again, we're thinking strategically first rather than tactically. We believe that people and process lead to successful technology, not only with large system integration projects, but also operational type projects as well. We're going to talk to you about CalCloud strategy and governance. We now have a governance structure in place for how we're going to move CalCloud along. We're going to put the necessary change management and change control processes in place. So all of you who are going to be onboarded into CalCloud will be allowed to participate in that process. We're going to prioritize work as we schedule that work into the Department of Technology. So that'll be really important in terms of what we lay out with a governance framework or how we're going to communicate moving forward. CalCloud services, we're going to talk about the new services we're going to provide. We're going to talk to you about our enhanced customer services from an OTEC perspective, catalog and revisions to our service level catalog in terms of moving forward. So when you come in and we present information to you, it's really like a menu when you walk into a restaurant. You'll be able to have many service offerings to take advantage of. So that's a little bit about how we're restructuring CalCloud and being able to move forward today. We're going to also speak to the technology roadmap of how we're going to get there from here. You know, we look at this as a new line of business, and it's very important that it gets fed and nurtured, but it's also that we track and manage it. So we're going to manage this to a baseline schedule for some of those project management and strategic folks here in the crowd. And finally, the framework. How are we going to get there from here? You know, what are the low-hanging fruits, things are we going to take advantage of in terms of an adoption strategy? So we're going to share a comprehensive adoption strategy with you that's really important. CalCloud portfolio status. We're going to talk to you about where we're at with the current portfolio and some of the things we're going to look at moving forward from a governance perspective. Also, too, what you guys might find very attractive is the rate reductions. You know, one of the things when CalCloud was first developed or first came on board, when we talked to the customer community, some of the feedback that we got was that, you know what, the rates are too high. They're not consistent and complementary with Amazon or other service providers for software infrastructure as a service. So we went back and renegotiated the contract with IBM to bring those rates really in line with those other service providers and competitors. So we're going to lay all of those rates out that I think you'll find very attractive. Also the timeline for services and how we're going to get things done and move forward. And then, of course, optional vendor services. We have what's called vendor-hosted subscription services that we've laid out. We have some that are already qualified in that particular area. We believe that we're going to open this up and be more vendor agnostic. So we're going to qualify many software as a service providers and platform providers as really third-party services. You know, we understand that infrastructure as a service, why it's hosted on-prem at OTEC with IBM, that may not be the be-all that ends-all for some folks. So we understand that we have to be consistent and complementary and more accommodating in terms of our role with CalCloud. And if we can be a broker of some services that also can meet your needs, that we want to provide that particular business value as well. So we're going to walk through and talk about what the next steps are with those applicable services too. And then finally, security. We're going to talk to you about our security event management system that we're putting in place that's FedRAMP and NIST compliant, so that we're working arduously to put in place quickly here. And they're really the benefits of that. And as many of you know or maybe don't know, there's going to be a security audit that's coming out here. Should be coming out any day that's very critical of the state and how we secure and manage data. So having FedRAMP and NIST compliance and really a third-party Tier 3 data center will be very important to your needs moving forward. So we're moving those types of processes in place very quickly. So who's using CalCloud ISS now? We're going to talk to you about some success stories of some early adopters. You know, early adopters, you know, there's pros and cons coming with early adoption. Obviously, when you stand up a new line of business, there's challenges. And so we're going to talk about what those challenges are, but what are some of the opportunities we've taken to address some of those things and mitigate those risks moving forward. We're going to talk to you about the infrastructure as a service user group. We're commissioning a user group now to talk about portal stabilization and fixing the current processes and putting the right types of maintenance in place, and also escalating customer services in terms of how incidents are managed and escalated or prioritized within our particular organization. We want to be more customer responsive as we line up this new line of business. The onboarding process, we're going to say, how do you get trained with an infrastructure as a service? What are the processes that you have to go through? It's more than just submitting a service request, but there's initial things that you need to go through to onboard particular applicants within the infrastructure as a service. So we're going to comprehensively walk through step by step what that is. And then after this forum, we're going to conduct independent trainings. So folks have a clear understanding of how this line of business works. How do you onboard items and applications within CalCloud? And what are some of the other various next steps that we can help you with in terms of being successful as a partnership? And really, upcoming vendor forums. Next month, we're going to have a vendor forum, as I talked about earlier, that speaks to vendor-hosted subscription services. The vendor community wants to know, how can I participate? How can I get on a contract vehicle? So right now, we're working with our partner at Department of General Services to address and lay out what those priorities and criteria are as we move forward. This is going to be very important because it will allow vendors, we can streamline the process, we can do leverage procurements through OTEC. Through your service request process, you can initiate that particular item, and if you want that service and it's covered on our contract vehicle, then we'll help broker that service to the Department of Technology. So you don't have to go out and independently do that on your own. So not only by addressing CalCloud and ensuring that we have a consistent and complementary business model, I think it's going to be very important too that we also address procurements in the state and how we can leverage those to make them more efficient for bringing business value. And then we're going to summarize all of the things that you're going to hear today and talk about that. And then in the end, we're going to take questions and provide the necessary information on what are the next steps and how we're going to get there from here. So department initiatives, some of the things that we have going right now that we're laying out is we're conducting a department strategic plan. We're in the process of submitting a request for offer to bring in a vendor to help us develop this plan. Now, Carlos Ramos, obviously, who's the state CIO, has a state strategic plan, but the Department of Technology does not. So one of the things we wanted to do with the advent of this agency going back to a department is lay out a plan that includes our OTEC, which is our state data center, our policy area, which is managed by my peer, Andrea Roman, and then operations, which is managed and led by me, and laying out really a strategic vision and roadmap of how we're going to meet customer needs. We want to be a cross-cutting customer service-centric organization, and we're going to lay out what that is, because I believe what gets measured gets managed, and if we let data drive decisions, we'll be a more effective organization in terms of meeting your customer needs moving forward. We're going to talk about, as I addressed earlier, service catalog redesign. What does that mean? A menu. We want to develop a menu of services by products and descriptions. I think right now we have a service level catalog, but it needs to be more comprehensive, and we want to lay out all the services that Department of Technology provides. Not only CalCloud services, but our new project management office, our GIS capabilities with e-services, and other things that we're working on to drive and proliferate a state open data portal. So you're going to be hearing more about all of the comprehensive services that we provide and how you can potentially take advantage of those services. IT service management. This is the improvements we're making in our remedy system with BMC and looking at incident service level knowledge problem change management processes and how we're going to provide service request fulfillment. This is very important. So again, as we line up this line of business, we need to be responsive of how we escalate certain tickets and manage those appropriately. So that's happening right now within OTEC as we're moving these services forward. So if there are incidents or are issues, that we can be responsive to those needs and provide that level of communication back to you as we move forward. So these are a little bit about the services going on. Cybersecurity, we're going to talk to you more about cybersecurity and what we're doing in that space as well to help you address any security compliance or certification issues that you may have moving forward. And then obviously we're going to talk to you about CalCloud and the comprehensive strategic approach that we have. And then again, the statewide PMO and what we're doing with our statewide project management office now that's under my direction and how we can help you manage system integration projects if you don't have the right level of project management expertise within your organization moving forward. So what is the mission? Obviously, again, we're thinking about being more strategic with CalCloud. And really our mission is offer cost-effective cloud solutions that will provide you with convenient on-demand access to a shared pool of configurable resources. We want this to be an on-demand service because we understand that there's a sense of urgency within your particular departments and agencies and how you do business. And we want to make sure that we can provide that as a mission. And really to be a catalyst in a vision for emerging new technology delivery models, for delivering efficient, flexible, and secure cloud services to all of our customers. Again, very important that we have this in place and that we deliver to it. And really drive customer adoption as a goal through new workload and business opportunities. And you'll hear more about that. So you have a one-pager everybody probably got when you came in about the strategy and governance process for CalCloud. We really wanted to put this on a one-pager. I know it's really hard to read on the screen, and that's why we printed some of these out. But really to speak to the amount of strategic processes that have gone into this new line of business and how we're reshaping this moving forward. And we're going to walk through some of these ensuing places, but you can see how we're looking at really CalCloud and moving forward with the technology roadmap and how we're going to establish governance and communication with the community. Vital signs, just like you would have vital signs when you go to the doctor. If you're well and you're healthy, we want to be able to have vital signs for how we measure and manage CalCloud and ensure that this is a successful strategy and implementation moving forward. We have CalCloud services, obviously, that we're going to talk to in terms of expanding our service level footprint to include more adoption of hybrid type strategies. Beneficiaries, who are the beneficiaries of what we're doing within the organization as well? Organizational change management, of how we're looking at this also too from the people side of change. You know, we go through and technology consistently evolves, but sometimes we leave the people behind, and sometimes that's an ineffective way to do business. So we're also addressing the people side of change as we stand up this new line of business. Governance framework. What is the framework that we have with governance? And we'll talk more about that, of really leveraging the strategy, leveraging the community as what I call community-based governance, from our AIO community to key CIOs and also key managers, of what is the framework for how we're going to make decisions and prioritize those decisions. So again, being involved, getting in the boat, and moving forward together is going to be really important with this and other initiatives that the Department of Technology is going to implement moving forward. And of course, our adoption strategies. We're going to get more detailed in terms of what our adoption strategy is and how we're going to bring new clientele and customers into CalCloud and some of the other service offerings that we're going to provide. And then really, what are the customer benefits? And we're going to stress what those customer benefits are as well. So really looking at those services now, we're talking about vendor-hosted subscription services again as CalCloud. We're looking at email. One of the things that we've done with email that you'll be happy to know is we've renegotiated the contract with CSC and Microsoft. So we're looking at doing a 2-year extension with the current CS email program for 2010. But within that extension, we're going to start looking at very soon opportunities to work directly with Microsoft and where we go from here. Is it the Microsoft community-based cloud that we're interested in, or is it the VNext solution, which transitions us to 2013? So whatever we want to do, we want to make sure this is closely coupled with Office 365, because we want to provide that as a vendor-hosted subscription service. So again, as opposed to securing Microsoft operating systems or software 134 times in the state, we can do it once as an enterprise procurement. So driving to enterprise level strategies and standards is going to be increasingly important as we move forward. So I'm going to rely on those folks again within our governance strategy to work to make the best decisions for the state moving forward. So that's very exciting. Infrastructure again as a service of what we're doing with IBM, the service level improvements that we've made, the portal stability issues we've made, the levels of security that we now have in forward, and also the service level enhancements that we're currently providing at the data center today. We'll discuss. Really, customer benefits, I know we've talked about this. Lower cost model obviously is going to be very important to you. Rapid availability to provision services on time. Secure hosting, again, having the right level of compliance in place. So if there is a security audit, you know where your data is at in a third-party data center. You can audit that data, and there's levels of security that will be in place. We're also going to talk about security in terms of vendor-hosted solutions as well. So they'll have to be NIST compliant when they come in. So how do we qualify vendors? So you'll hear more about that in the coming days and weeks. Multiple service offerings, technology recovery. What are we doing in those particular areas? You're going to hear about no capital expenditures. That's obviously a benefit as well when you walk through as opposed to commissioning a third-party service. Improved flexibility for navigation and making sure that you have the right cost model in place. So even though the service may be at Department of Technology or OTEC, your database administrators can still provision and manage services within that environment. So I think that that's the flexibility that we're looking at as we move forward with these applicable service offerings. So really adoption strategy. We want to work with you as the customer to identify ways that you can benefit from cloud technology. So our customer delivery division, you're going to hear Michael Ochoa come up and talk to you about that, on what that strategy is and how we're going to engage you and find out if there's services and things that are applicable to CalCloud. We've talked about, again, the new vendor-hosted subscription services and adding that to our portfolio and what that means. So we'll be walking through and identifying those priorities for you. What those managed services are in CalCloud IaaS that may be a good fit for you today that are in our managed services environment that we can transition to CalCloud. And we've been developing some migration of services around those. The adoption roadmap, again, to track and monitor customer migration activities. What we want to make sure is as we book business and move business in, it's just not a one-size-fits-all, and we're just not going to cram a bunch of services into Department of Technology. We're going to do so in an efficient and effective manner, and we're going to manage it like a project where there's a baseline schedule that lists dependencies, resources, issues, and risks. So we're letting you know that we're managing this appropriately because we understand that there is a certain level of risk on your side, and that we'll manage to that. Again, secure multiple assessment and migration vendors for optional use for customers. This is very important with migration services because in the original contract, basically IBM was the one that was moving that service forward. Now what we're doing in terms of, again, being vendor agnostic and open this up to more service level vendors that have criteria is we're qualifying an MSA or other contract vehicle to bring in vendors to help with those hosting and transition of those migration activities. Those particular vendors may have more subject matter expertise given that they work with you within those particular platforms. So they're probably better suited to help do the migration. So we'll talk to you more about that contract and what's out on the street today to improve those service delivery methods. Again, offer shared services within CalCloud Infrastructure as a Service and how we're going to lay that out. Also too, again, with our technology roadmap as talked about in this sheet here, we're going to create and maintain a roadmap that tracks and monitors new and enhanced cloud services. So again, what gets measured gets managed. So you'll have more communication as you move your particular services into CalCloud. You'll understand how that's going to be and we'll be clear in terms of the line of communication to support that. Existing cloud services we've talked about. IaaS features based on customer input. Again, as we make changes and stabilize the portal, you'll have the ability to come through a change control process to identify what those portal changes or enhancements could be to that portal. If it's, if it's validation or if it's identity access management, those are some of the things we want to look at long term as we move forward. We realize we're not a one-size-that-fits-all now, but we are moving forward to a process where we can be in the state, and we're going to solicit your input to make sure that that happens. Again, establishing measurable analytics. One of the things I talked about with BMC and our remedy services is basically dashboard capability to find out how escalation processes are in place so we can share that information with you either by agency or department of number of tickets submitted, number of services that OTEC provides you, and what is the escalation process. Again, we're talking about really giving to service level agreements is what we're trying to get to here, is making sure that we have an idea of what our commitments are and that we're making sure that we're meeting our commitments as we roll out these new services for you. This really speaks to the high-level governance framework that we have in place right now. It starts at the Department of Technology, obviously with Carlos being the state CIO and myself as a Chief Deputy Director of Operations and Andrea Wallen-Roman as Chief Deputy Director of Policy. We've put together now a governance framework for how we're going to make decisions with lines of businesses, starting really with CalCloud and moving forward. We have a statewide operations executive leadership council. Right now I'm chairing that as executive sponsor. We have all the AIOs and some key CIOs in there, and we'll probably bring stakeholders into that process. So that's how our governance structure is going to work right now as we provide advice and recommendations on what we're going to do. But I'm really looking to the community to drive and move forward with the best possible solutions to bring business value. And so here's the areas right now that we're looking at with OTEC and other operations services that we'll be managing and handling. CalCloud Infrastructure as a Service moving forward. Our vendor-hosted subscription services, and again, statewide email. We're going to be talking about statewide email soon. Once the contract and the NCB gets managed and handled with CSC, we're going to move forward with this governance structure to start making decisions to get you the types of services that we all want and deserve moving forward. So that really lays into the governance framework. We have a governance strategy that if you're interested, I can share with you that really gets into the details of how we're going to make decisions, but I wanted to let you know that is in place and we're going to use that to make decisions in the state moving forward. And I found that to be a very effective strategy even with large system integration projects.